Picture coming across a 3,700-year-old Babylonian tablet, a delicate piece of work long forgotten and allowed to collect dust in a dusty old museum drawer. Now, picture plugging that same tablet into state-of-the-art artificial intelligence, not hoping for much more than a translation, and then standing agog as the machine disgorges mathematical and astronomical information so advanced, so intelligent, that it challenges the very ground of everything we believed we knew regarding the limits of ancient human knowledge. What if this artifact does more than tell us things? What if it rewrites the history of human history itself and reveals to us that minds in ancient times functioned on a level of logic, abstraction, and applied science that we thought did not exist for thousands of years? With advancements by Tel Aviv University's AI translation software, the University of New South Wales' intense studies of Plimpton 322, and the disquieting findings discovered on eclipsomen tablets, we are looking at realities that seek to overhaul entirely the way we perceive the past. But this raises a chilling question: how could a civilization from nearly 4 millennia ago crack mathematical systems of such complexity long before Pythagoras was even born? If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Picture a weathered clay tablet, known today as Plimpton 322, carefully chiseled into existence roughly 3,700 years ago in ancient Larsa, a thriving Sumerian city-state. It appears unremarkable at first sight, merely another palm-sized piece of clay, uncomplicated enough to hold between your own hand. But within this tiny quantity of fired clay lies a mathematical secret so deep that 20th-century academics would take dozens of years even to start to interpret its significance. For hundreds of years, it remained in silence, its wedge-shaped cuneiform signs immortalized in time like whispers caught in rock. Fast forward to the early 1900s. Edgar Banks, an American diplomat turned antiquities dealer, whose swashbuckling adventures would even help inspire the character of Indiana Jones, acquired the tablet in Iraq. Eventually, Plimpton 322 made its way into the rare books collection at Columbia University in New York. And there it remained, largely ignored, displayed in a dusty case, seemingly unremarkable to the casual eye. But things aren't as they seem. To most academics, it was for many years just another piece of muddled ancient math. But during the 1940s, scientists saw something very strange. The figures inscribed on the tablet weren't haphazard, they created exact sets of Pythagorean triples, collections of numbers that exactly fulfill the Pythagorean theorem. And here's the amazing twist: this was more than 1,000 years before even Pythagoras himself would be born. It wasn't until the 21st century, when scholars such as Daniel Mansfield and Norman Wildberger of the University of New South Wales started studying the tablet in earnest, that the full brilliance of Plimpton 322 was revealed. Plimpton 322 wasn't just a quirky list of right triangles. It was, in fact, a trigonometric table. But not trigonometry as we recognize it today. This was sexagesimal trigonometry, a base, 60-number system. In some ways, it was simpler, cleaner, and even more accurate than the trigonometry you studied in school. Think of a clock face, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. Unlike base 10, which leaves messy decimals behind, base 60 can be divided evenly by 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, producing exact fractions instead of awkward, endless decimals. What the Babylonians had created was a system that was for accuracy, and in most aspects, it was better than ours. The tablet itself holds 15 rows of numbers, one for every right triangle. And these were not small, basic triangles. Some of them involved huge integers, numbers such as 119, 120, and 169, demonstrating scale and sophistication. The leftmost column seems to have the square of the ratio of the hypotenuse to the larger leg of the triangle, falling in order row by row. That degree of orderliness wasn't coincidental. It was evidence of a deliberate, systematic system of mathematics created with purpose. Here's the detail that gets historians' backs up: the Babylonians hadn't accidentally discovered these calculations through chance. They used a system. They chose ordinary numbers, ones that could be divided by small primes such as 2, 3, and 5, to remain tidy within the base 60 system. This was not random guesswork, it was algorithmic thought. Essentially, this was one of the first known instances of something very similar to programming, not on silicon chips, but in the ordered minds of ancient clerks. Still more remarkable, UNSW's examination indicates that we possess Plimpton 322 in its incomplete state. The original could have had 6 columns and as many as 38 rows, a much more detailed and organized reference book than the fragment that we possess now. Dr. Wildberger even went so far as to say that it is more accurate than modern tables of trigonometry, as the Babylonian system was based on exact proportions rather than approximations. Now, picture this, you're sitting in your high school geometry class, and your instructor blithely tosses out this bombshell, that theorem everyone gives to Pythagoras. The Babylonians had it 1,000 years earlier, and in some respects, they may have done it better. That's the historical version of a mic drop. But the ramifications extend far beyond boasting rights or rewording an asterisk in textbooks. Plimpton 322 makes us rethink the very narrative we construct about how science and math came to be. For centuries, the story has been straightforward: the Greeks invented mathematics, geometry, and astronomy. But this small tablet, inscribed in Mesopotamia, implies that the truth is older and a great deal more complicated. It points to a profound genesis in the mud-brick cities and skyscraping ziggurats of Babylon. This is an important question: what was Plimpton 322 employed to do? Some believe it could have been an educational tool within scribal schools, educating tomorrow's mathematicians to develop systematic, logical ways of thinking. Others think it was a utilitarian tool, a tool that architects and engineers would use to draw temples, canals, and palaces with surreal accuracy. Picture surveyors, out under the scorching Mesopotamian sun, holding a clay blueprint like this and ensuring their building was precisely in line. The elegance of Babylonian trigonometry was its simplicity. They didn't waste their time with sine, cosine, and tangent. Rather, they worked with ratios directly, keeping the concept in its raw form. And since they employed base 60 arithmetic, their answers tended to be more precise than ours are today. Consider that, the math you slaved over in high school was perhaps diluted from what people many centuries ago already mastered some 2,500 years ago. And here comes the role of AI. This is not just a matter of old tablets being read once again by human fingers. Artificial intelligence is now able to read cuneiform tablets with tremendous speed. What it took decades of laborious human research to do now is achievable within hours. But unlike reading symbols, AI is capable of recognizing mathematical patterns in the symbols, uncovering patterns and processes that no human eye had seen before. That's where the cold bolt of words comes into being: 3,700-year-old ancient Babylonian tablet cracked by AI. What it revealed is scary. For if AI can accomplish this with one tablet, what other stuff is sitting in museum drawers and archives, poised to turn our knowledge of history on its head? How many new innovations could be really rediscoveries of things that people once knew, forgot, and then rediscovered centuries later? And even then, Plimpton 322 might be theory only. But theory alone does not construct ziggurats, water fields, or chart the stars. Which brings us to the next chapter: what did they do with this knowledge? That's where another tablet, C427, becomes the star. Unlike Plimpton 322, it wasn't theoretical, it was practical. It brought mathematics into everyday life, resolving conflicts, defining terrain, and anchoring society itself. If Plimpton 322 was the hypothesis, the ancient version of a university lecture inscribed on clay, C427 was the field guide, the application to the dusty, sun-scorched landscape of Mesopotamia of shockingly advanced mathematics. Where Plimpton 322 spoke softly of abstraction and ratio, C427 bellowed about geometry in the real world. It wasn't a tidy catalogue of right triangles as a mental exercise. This was applied mathematics, molded into clay for a practical, pressing purpose: to resolve conflicts about territory. Now imagine this time period. It's approximately 1900 BCE, in the busy city of Sippar, near the city of Babylon itself. No glass towers, no satellites hovering above, no GPS apps on phone apps. Your landmarks are irrigation canals through fields, crumbling mud brick walls, and now and then the loom of some tremendous ziggurat on the horizon. And yet here, in this rough, pre-industrial landscape, a Babylonian surveyor grasps in his hand a clay tablet the size of an iPad mini, except this one is dense, fired, and covered with lines of sharp cuneiform script. That tablet, C427, holds geometric computations so advanced that even today's surveyor would recognize them. When Australian mathematician Daniel Mansfield cracked this tablet in 2019, he found it wasn't just math for math's sake. This was a court document, a permanent record intended to endure time and controversy. It established, in precise mathematical language, the borders of a farmer's field. And the figures inscribed upon it? They weren't arbitrary measurements, they were Pythagorean triples, the same style of mathematics uncovered in Plimpton 322. But this time, the mathematics wasn't abstract. It was being applied as a real-world, enforceable tool to inscribe straight lines, define exact corners, and settle disputes. And here's where it gets really disturbing: this was more than 1,000 years before Pythagoras was even born. The Greeks had not yet penned a single word of philosophy, but in Mesopotamia, surveyors were applying the same mathematical proportions to construct order from chaos. If Plimpton 322 is the old textbook, C427 is the engineer's blueprint in his hand. It's evidence that the Babylonian